In terms of the Bangkok story, I know we've all heard the story, but is that accurate that the military actually came in, Thai soldiers, and tranquilized Billy?
I wasn't there.
Right, okay.
And at that time, we weren't working together. I've only heard it from him.
Right.
But
you can verify it's probably true.
That sounds pretty legit to me,
Welcome back to Innersleeve on the SoundMojo podcast network. I'm your host, Cassius Morris, and we're joined with another absolute heavyweight in the music game. Joining us from Los Angeles, California, Steve Stevens. Steve, how are you?
All right, good. My pleasure to be here.
Definitely. Hey, we're super happy to have you. So I definitely want to let people have an update about what's been up with you lately. 2021, I know you're working on some new projects. What are you doing going into this year?
Well, we just we finished up touring, obviously, in March when COVID hit. Every year we do a residency in Las Vegas, and it became apparent that our touring plans had come to a screeching halt. So and this is of course Billy Idol.
Yes.
So we finished up and we said, okay, well, we're going to both quarantine, and we made plans to record new music with producer Butch Walker. And Butch is kind of like a self-contained jack of all trades. He's got his own studio, does all his own engineering, plays every instrument imaginable. And so the three of us were able to actually do new music over the course of the year. And We've just finished that, and we've done our mixes. And I guess the plan is now to get it, figure out when the right time to get it out is. But it'll definitely be this year. And so that's kind of been, we've managed to still be productive throughout the year, and hopefully, this year we'll start to put out new music, and we're just waiting to find out when we can go back out and play.
That makes sense. So how different does it feel right now compared to the regular process? Does it feel very different or more close to the same?
The touring thing is what's killing us,
Right.
with such, I've been touring since I was 22 years old,
Wow.
Never stopped, and, in one project or another, and it's taken me all over the world, everywhere. And to see that, to have it suddenly stop is shocking, for all musicians. Fortunately, I have a home studio, so, I continue to work and continue to be creative. And my wife and I kind of discovered things that we could never do because we were touring, like have house plants and cooking and things that
meet with friends.
Yeah. So in that respect, we kind of, we try and look at the glass half full, and made the best of the year and caught up on all the, films and all the, doing all the same stuff to keep our sanity that everybody else is. But I think any musician will tell you by nature, we're pretty, unless we're on the road, we're pretty much, either recording or writing or whatever. So that hasn't changed. It's just the touring is, and of course, we've got a road crew of guys who have been with us, some of them 18 years, and they're
wow.
That for them it's devastating.
That's their life.
Yeah, because we'll tour, say 3 months, but then those guys are then, they've got their year planned out. They're going to go out on another tour and then pick up another tour, and so those are the guys who I really feel for. That their livelihood is just like, they don't have the luxury of doing what I do as a musician. So I really feel for those guys.
And you've been actually doing some things giving back, I believe, with the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp and things along those lines for those guys. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's a number of organizations that helps raise money for, guys, and crew members and stuff. So, it's a no-brainer if I'm asked to do something like that. Of course, come on, it's the least I can do.
Do you feel like those guys are underappreciated, just generally speaking, because they what they do is so much of a live production?
Yeah. being with Billy Idol for 38 years now, we travel pretty cush,
Right.
And,
I assume it's okay.
yeah, and but when I went out with a side project that I had with Matt Sorum and Geezer Butler called Deadland Ritual, and we went to Europe, and we was much scaled down, and I was on the bus with the crew and stuff, and I learned stuff. Those guys, I was like, when do they sleep? Because
it's a whole new way of life.
They're out of the bus at 5 a.m. to load into the venue and then get everything ready. And I was like, they don't get the showers. They don't stay at the Ritz-Carlton. They don't,
No.
And it was like, I came away from that tour really, I see how the other half lives, and they were like, I see. All right, wise guy.
Maybe the next tour, they should all stay in the Ritz-Carlton and they can see how your half lives.
That's why we love doing the Vegas residency, because they don't have to break down the gear. We all stay in the same hotel. I mean, our crew loves doing that gig. And, that's a sorely missed one,
Totally.
Yeah.
What hotel is that in Vegas? Because that's actually at the top of my list, but I didn't see where the theater was.
The last one was at Mandalay Bay. And
nice.
The theater there is really nice. It's, they threw a lot of money into sound and staging, and everything about that place is like first class. It's great.
What's the main difference between doing a residency run rather than a regular tour? What are the main things that stand out?
Well, the thing that we realized early on is that people come in, we'll do three shows a week. And those fans that come in, they fly in from everywhere, and they're there for those 3 shows. So you want to do a different show every night, and we got an opportunity to, you get your lights and sound fantastically timed and perfect, because it stays. You can really rehearse that stuff, right. And we were able to dig into some of the more obscure back catalog things and try different arrangements, because we want people to experience a different show every night. So, it was a good opportunity to kind of revisit some of the, tunes that, back in the 80s, there was a lot of stuff that, especially on Whiplash Smile, the third Billy Idol record, we didn't have the technology available to be able to replicate those songs live. And so we kind of looked at that and go, oh yeah, now we can do this. And, we've got a shit hot band, and it's, a great way to, present some of the maybe Billy Idol stuff that people haven't heard in quite a number of years.
That makes a lot of sense. So you have factors that are staying the same, making it for a more fluid show. However, you're also trying to do things every night to mix it up, because you know that you have that return audience, which you probably wouldn't get if it's, in a city 4 or 5 hours away by car.
Yeah. And, the previous tour that we did was we were out with Bryan Adams, and it was a shortened set. So obviously you want to play the hits. But we also want to play some of the things that, we haven't, played a million times. So,
right.
But it's a shorter set. So doing the Vegas thing, we do, and we throw in covers and, Viva Las Vegas or anything, whatever we could think of, hey, let's just try it. Cause you're there, you can rehearse in the afternoon in the theater, and you can rehearse your lights and sound and everything. So it was like having our own laboratory, so to speak.
That must be really cool to have that home base rather than be constantly moving and packing.
Great. I mean, it was, and my wife and I have friends in Vegas, and so it was like a little bit of a home base for us, and it's we finish the show on Saturday night, and by 2 a.m, you're in, we fly back to LA where we are, and we're back in bed, Saturday night. So
ready for the next one.
Yeah, so it was great. It was great. Really, really good. I hope that we can resume that at some point.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And not to bring things to a heavy note, but I do think it's important in terms of memorial. You were good friends with the New York Dolls. Is that correct?
I wasn't good friends with them. Sylvain, who just passed away, who is really the founder of that band.
Yeah.
I started. I went to high school in Manhattan and started hanging out in Manhattan and saw the whole scene happen, CBGB's, Max's Kansas City, all that stuff. And Sylvain is such a New York fixture. Mm-hmm. And in my previous band, we lived in a music building. There's like 10 floors and about 40 bands that lived there. And Sylvain used to come by our loft that we had there and hang out. Johnny Thunders lived in the building. And
wow.
And I remember we were trying to figure out a stage name for me. My family came over, immigrated from Russia. And when they landed at Ellis Island, they gave the family the name Schneider, which is a German name. It's Taylor. And it's not, when I said to my dad, I just can't see, 20,000 people yell, going Schneider,
It's not as catchy.
Yeah. So he said, well, you could change your name because it's not really it's not the real family name. They couldn't pronounce it. And so I was, trying to figure out a name for me. And Sylvain came over and I said, what do you think if I just do what you did? I'll use my first name twice. Yeah. And he gave me his blessing. He said, work for me.
Wow. That's incredible.
So I hadn't seen him in a long time. And then we did a show probably about 10 years ago, and the Reformed Dolls were on it. And I saw him and I go, do you remember, talking about my name change? He said, absolutely. So
nice.
It was great. But he was just a real New York fixture. And he was a cool guy, man. He was a wealth of rock and roll information and never strayed from what he loved, which was really, roots rock. Eddie Cochran. There's a lot of like early rockabilly and real roots rock and roll in the New York Dolls, and I think Sylvain brought a lot of that. And, that famous guitar that eventually became Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. Was Sylvain's, and he's a guy that definitely is in well in the history books as being especially for a New Yorker. We loved Sylvain,
Of course. I mean, that's a period of history that's quite removed from my reality. I'm 22 years old at the moment. So, when you mentioned that's when you started touring, I could definitely, put myself in your shoes mentally, at least. But, just looking back at that scene, from what I can tell, I think it's hard to overstate the Dolls' impact. I mean, they seem to really have been like sort of the start of this mecca.
Yeah, I mean, they would, they for all intents and purposes, probably made the first, punk rock record or first cheap punk rock. They were the blueprint. And it was so ironic because they came out at a time when like progressive rock was, the selling thing, all these, bombastic, and I love progressive rock, but I love anything that's real, that's from the heart, and I love the fact that the Dolls and Kiss and all these bands, they looked like rock stars, even before they got signed and didn't have a pot to piss in, they looked like they were the richest rock stars on the planet.
That's a good point.
They were definitely an important part of any budding guitar player from New York City. Definitely.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned the musician's house where there was 30 to 40 musicians staying in a house. I mean, talk to me about that. Was there ever a waking hour where bands weren't rehearsing? Could people sleep in there?
Yeah, well, I slept under the drum riser. We had a rehearsal room, so my bed was under the drum riser, and we had a band that lived below us called the Testers, a punk rock band from Akron. I think they were from Akron or Cleveland, Ohio, but they were friends with the Dead Boys. So the Dead Boys would come in and rehearse.
Nice.
And but they wouldn't get going till about 1 a.m. After the Testers were all done, Right. So 1 and 2 a.m, Cheetah Chrome is below me, and Yeah, you didn't get much sleep there, but you didn't want to. You wanted to experience everything. And that building was, at the time I lived there, Cyndi Lauper lived there. Miles Davis would come in and use a rehearsal room. And I mean, I'd see everybody in there, Harry Belafonte. I mean, every kind of musician.
Wow.
That was, that because it was all rehearsal studios. So, and it was very, A, it was inexpensive to live there, and B, very inexpensive to rehearse there. And if you needed a piece of gear, you could just, knock on somebody's door. Hey, do you have an extra tube? My amp blew. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Chances are they had everything.
It was a great environment, and a really good training ground for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, wow, what a time and what a place. That's something I can only imagine, And in terms of, the party hours of those times, I wonder, there's so much talk and hype about those days. Were they crazier than they sounded, or less crazy than they sounded in terms of the scale of these rockstar parties?
Well, we were all broke, so we couldn't really afford good drugs or anything.
That's in the beginning, in like 81, 80.
Yeah, I lived there. I moved in there at about 79, and then and the band. I left that band and joined Billy Idol at the end of very beginning of 82, I believe. Okay. And I had to move back to my parents. I lived in my parents' basement when I first met Billy, but during the time living in the what was called the Music Building, I was, it was, I can't really. There were no casualties, or people were really not aware of all the, the downfalls of drugs as much, and there was no such thing as, we didn't know what rehab was or any of this kind of stuff. And your friends, you usually had a good support system. If somebody was indulging too much or getting losing sight of the music or something, you had people around you to say, "Hey, man, you need to cut back. You need, because your other bandmates, everybody was trying to get signed and get a record deal and get exposure. So everyone was career driven. That building was a hub of activity. And, we had a lot of like record company A&R people come to see us, and that was happening in all the rehearsal spaces. So bands were getting signed out of it. There was venues to play live shows. It was feeding the machine of making records and having audiences and building careers. Yeah. So there really wasn't, we did drugs then to have fun, really,
Mm-hmm. But it was a focused thing.
It really was. Yeah. Like I said, people were very career driven.
So did that change throughout the 80s? Obviously the results didn't change because you guys continued to get bigger and bigger, but how did that dynamic go in terms of saying, like, we got to put the music first and the party second? Did you always keep that?
We try to. The thing that, and I'm sure a lot of musicians will tell you this, what happens is that, number one, if you're successful, now you have money to buy some drugs.
Right. Naturally.
But what we discovered was when we were out on tour, and the Rebel Yell tour was, 8.5, 9 months. Wow. And, we're on a tour bus, and you start playing to big venues, which we're now, I'd say 3 months after the record's released, we're now playing arenas, and that adrenaline rush, 20,000 people giving you this intense adrenaline rush, and you're young, and you're leaving it all on the stage, and you get on that bus for an 8-hour drive, and that crash is painful. It's like, what do you do after you're so on 11, and you get on the tour bus and you want to continue the party, and that's when you discover cocaine and booze, and you kind of ride that wave, and get to your hotel, crash out, do a sound check, and it's this cycle, and you come off the road, and you've got a nice little addiction going.
Right. And so you may not even realize it's forming.
May not even realize it. Yeah. May not even realize it.
Wow. That's fascinating. And you guys were on the legendary run. In terms of the Bangkok story, I know we've all heard the story, but is that accurate that the military actually came in, Thai soldiers, and tranquilized Billy?
I wasn't there.
Right. Okay.
And at that time we weren't working together. I've only heard it from him.
Right.
But
you can verify it's probably true.
That sounds pretty legit to me,
Did you guys ever talk about stuff like that, like when you weren't working together, or for that matter, how much were you talking when you weren't actively in the group together?
Well, we didn't leave I didn't leave under bad terms or anything. Billy, I was living in New York. We had done the third record, and he made the decision to move out to California. I didn't want to move to California, and a lot of record companies by then came knocking at my door offering me my own deal and stuff. And I said, well, I'm going to take this opportunity. One of my favorite producers offered to sign me at Warner Brothers, Ted Templeman, who had produced Van Halen and Doobie Brothers and so many great records. And I wanted to work with Ted. I really liked him. I got on really well with him. So
nice.
So I said to Billy, look, I'm going to stay in New York. I'm going to do a solo thing, and I'm sure we'll reconvene down the road. I wish you the best. And we never slagged each other off or anything. So when it came time for me to come back, a number of years later, we didn't have to make amends or anything. It was like, hey, good to see you,
Back where we left it off.
Pretty much so, yeah. And you'll find, either in a marriage, a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, or a musical partner, you're lucky to find that one person that you're like truly meant to be with and work with and respect. I mean, that's where it comes from, respect. First and foremost, you got to respect the person, and you got to be a fan. I'm a huge Billy Idol fan, and and always was. And I like Generation X, and I like the records he did with me. I like the records he did without me. It's there's just something for some strange reason, we found each other and we work very well together, and I kind of understand him, and he challenges me, I challenge him. But I mean, he knows I have his best interests at heart. And, I know that when I pick up the guitar and play something, he digs it, so I'm always looking for him to like, give me that smile of, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You can tell by his demeanor, sort of.
Absolutely. And it's true. Our relationship is same dynamic today as it was the day we met.
Do you feel closer at all with him now, or since the reunion in recent years?
Certainly. I mean, age will do that to you. But also, it's, we've shared a lot, and also, to play these songs that mean a hell of a lot to our audience, and especially now, we do meet and greets, and you get to hear people's stories about how, they diagnosed with cancer, and our music and performances helped them through it, and now they're in remission. And
it's amazing.
And we've lost family members and parents, and we have a lot of shared experiences that we're the only two that went through that, and we don't take it for granted, I think.
It sounds like a family of sorts.
It is. And my wife travels with us, and Billy loves her, and they love having her, and she contributes. She helps run our meet and greets, and it is very much family. I would say, and hopefully that, that translates on stage. I always say that the best special effect we have is the chemistry we have on stage, better than any laser lights or any pyro or anything. When I go see a band and, the guitar player's in his own world and the singers, I'm like, I'm glad.
You can tell.
I think I like seeing camaraderie,
Me too. And that's one of the most interesting things to me about you and Billy, Steve, is that you guys don't have this this thing with, like, you know, hey, I hate to call out names, but you look at Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, they've always had this rivalry, you know, like we know they love each other, but it's always like Joe Perry wishes he was singing and Steven doesn't want to let Perry get faster, then get more attention. You never see that with you guys. To what do you attribute that to? And I mean, do you have any thoughts on that sort of thing that happens with a guitar player and a singer?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, he is the boss, and it's his. I can suggest things, and I can co-write, but it's really his decision whether, what songs he wants to do, or I confer with him. My job is really, as a musical director and co-songwriter, to prep all that stuff and rehearse the band and all that kind of stuff. But I think having someone that has the final word eliminates a lot of that kind of, stuff. And I will tell you that a lot of bands that people think it's, even if they've been together for 30 years and they think it's all equal members, it's usually not. There's usually one guy who makes the decisions, either business wise or musically or whatever. And in our case, our partnership, we have a band of, 4 other guys, and we all work together, and, but ultimately it's to make Billy look as good as he can, and to make sure that we're being truthful to the message and the intent of the music, because it's not phony, it's not. That's the one thing that Billy carries with him from the punk rock days, is that let's not be phony about this. Showbiz is fine, but let's make sure that the songs mean something, and that we're not up there, just being puppets or something. Let's really put sweat and blood into it and move people emotionally. That's what we're trying to do ultimately. We don't always succeed at that, but when we do, it's really special.
It so is. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's so authentic. And, you guys' hits are some of the rare songs with heavy guitars, rock guitars that are played on pop stations, because they are listenable to all, but they're legit, and they have grit, and they have rock. And I think that's just what sets you guys apart. It's such a special thing. I mean, it must be quite a trip looking back at all the stuff that you've created.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is songs sometimes just appear, I mean, you can't, I don't think you could ever sit down and write, and go, okay, punch the clock, and we're going to write Eyes Without a Face today. We're going to write Rebel Yell of, or something. It doesn't happen that way. There's something in the air. I'll have a little gem of a part, or Billy will come in with a gem of a part. Maybe it's only three chords. I remember when we did the first record, we didn't have a single. So our producer, Keith Forsey, locked Billy up in the studio overnight. This was towards the end of the record, and he came out with White Wedding. And wow. Sometimes it's just, you're just waiting for it to happen. And sometimes you can go days, or you plan a schedule of writing, but it doesn't always happen for you. You don't always get a winner.
That's true. What a story, though. Do you find that it helps sometimes when you are under pressure, though? Because I mean, that producer, he sort of gave him a time limit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pressure is just there's a level of quality that we've maybe become accustomed to or strive for.
Yeah.
And we don't let each other down and just go, yeah, that's good. A lot of times, people work together or whatever, and they're afraid to say, yeah, you know what, it's not your best idea. With us, and even our band members will chime in, and they have the freedom to say, I can suggest something to our drummer, but I'm not a drummer. And he may go, oh, what if we did this as a drummer? He'll have a better handle on it. And they're free to express that. I don't ever want to be in a band with guys where it's like, this is the law and you got to do what that's no fun. So we challenge each other, and also you work with new people, and we just finished recording with Butch Walker, who's fantastic producer who I learned a lot from working with him, and it's always that way. You want to like work with people who bring other things to the table, and have a youthful energy about it and stuff. So you never stop learning. You never master it. Same goes with guitar playing. I never wake up and go, yeah, I got it all down.
You don't wake up and say, I'm the ultimate master, I'll never learn another thing.
Never happens. No.
Do you think that keeps you, that must be such an essential part of what keeps you growing?
Music is think of the history of music itself, started with some caveman knocking on a rock or something in time. And, some other guy goes, yeah, they don't know what it
is.
That's
kind of cool.
That's a beat, he's got a beat. And so from that to, and I've studied a lot of music history and, everything from Gregorian chants, and a lot of music was created in the church. And then you had, people that would nurture the arts and through classical music and then jazz. And it's like, if you want to, and especially with the internet, if you want to like delve into something and learn about something that maybe you can apply to your music. I arrange a lot of our stuff, and the best way to learn about arranging is from orchestral music, because arrangements are so key to that. And
yes,
I listen to a lot of film soundtracks and I listen to a lot of classical music, because I can apply that to what I do as a rock and roll guitar player, and maybe it gives me a little bit different edge. Whereas
right.
if I just listen to contemporary guitar players, I don't want to sound like somebody else. I want to sound like me. So
totally, that's the foundation of what those guys are doing, and of what we're all doing ultimately musically.
Yeah, and there's such an incredible history as a guitar player. I can go back and look at old footage of Muddy Waters and and get chills and go, wow,
yeah.
I'd love to interject something of that, or old footage of Hendrix or whatever. You go, man, it's even though technically there's guys that have gotten better than that, that dude really did have it together.
Yeah. Hendrix seems quite polarizing. A lot of the great guitarists, they seem to either love him or completely dismiss him. It's a strange thing.
Yeah, I love him. I think he's the greatest guitar player to ever walk the planet, and no disrespect to any other guitar player, but Hendrix changed it all, and he created a world. He was like a cat that came from outer space or something and brought and if you think about it, he only made records for 3 years. He only, So to do all of this in 3 years, and he had that foundation of blues and playing, with the Isley Brothers and doing the Chitlin circuit, that foundation of blues rock, and then putting psychedelic, you're going to England and absorbing the English stuff and utilizing the studio as a canvas. And he was the greatest, man. I
shook everything up.
And then, his lyrics, his lyrics are as good as Dylan to me. He had it all. And I know he was very shy about his singing, but I couldn't imagine anyone else coming up with that music and singing it instead of him. It's just, he was a world, he was his own. Hendrix was the whole thing, the whole package. And what a showman, come on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. He was just sort of like otherworldly. There's really no other way to describe it. And he'll always be remembered. If I ever have children, I'll always make sure they tell their kids about Jimi Hendrix, because I think that he was just getting started too.
Yeah. And he was a kind of an interesting cat, man. He was just like, I think, in a way, he wasn't destined to live longer than he did. I can't imagine Jimi Hendrix as an old guy.
It's very tough to imagine.
I can't. I think he was so sad to say, but he died accidentally. I've read a lot of books and talked to people that knew him, and he took some sleeping pills he had drank, and that's a recipe for disaster. It wasn't, he didn't take heroin that night or cocaine or anything. Sleeping pills and alcohol suppress your breathing, and he choked on his vomit, but man, what a legacy. I still listen to his records and just I'm like, how the hell did he come up with that?
Definitely. Timeless classics indeed.
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up, I just have a couple of questions from our viewers on YouTube. We got a ton of questions.
Okay.
One of them is from Sylvester. He wants to know, do you use any alternate tunings when producing music? If so, can you give us an example of how or when you've used them?
Not really. And with Billy Idol stuff, it's pretty much not alternate. Don't Need a Gun, which is on Whiplash Smile, has a drop D, what's called drop D in the low E string. But I've never done anything in open tuning with Billy, or tuned to a chord or anything like that.
Okay.
It's not something that I've really delved into. For some reason, it's not my bag, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I get it.
I don't know why,
No, that makes sense. So you just stick to what you know in the sound you've created. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I set out. There's a song by Crosby, Stills and Nash called Guinevere, and David Crosby was known for his open tuning, and I love that song. And I sat down to try and learn it in the open tuning, and it was daunting. I went, wow, if I'm going to learn this, I got to dedicate a couple of weeks to deciphering this. And there's like, 12-year-old kids on YouTube playing it, they've already figured it out. And I go,
people would be surprised to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I think if I, maybe if I take a vacation or something, I'll learn an open tuning or something,
I love that. Surprising and encouraging, because like you said, you are committed to constantly learning. So, there's probably people sitting in their room trying to learn Smoke on the Water, i.e. me, looking at you saying, oh shit, I wish I was at that level. But, you're still learning, even though you're a legend, man.
Yeah. I mean, I got some amazing, but really rudimentary advice once from Sharon Osbourne. We were at dinner. We were talking about guitar players, and it was actually at Billy Idol's birthday. And she said, the problem with you guitar players, like, uh-oh, here we go. She goes, when you're writing a song, you need to write a guitar style or a guitar part that makes somebody who's never played the guitar want to pick up and learn it, because it sounds like they could play it. And when you mention Smoke on the Water, that's a perfect example, because it's 3 chords, it's a repeating riff. Same with Satisfaction. I mean, and I remember, and I went, that's so simple, but it's so true that guitar players forget to play to people that really know nothing about guitar. And those are the people that you really want to hit, to have an impact on. Rather than play something that a bunch of guitar players in the audience are going to hold up scorecards.
Yeah, and then everybody else is sort of like, they probably can enjoy it, but it's not going to give them that same visceral feeling. We recently, I'd say in the last 4 years, started touring in South America. South American audiences, first of all, they'll chant the football chant before you get on, and they'll sing every word. But the other thing they do is they sing. When you go into a guitar solo, they sing the solo. And I realized that having solos that are memorable and melodic, that is the most powerful thing you can do as a guitar player. If you get up there and you play a solo and it goes, right,
audience can't participate. They can go, wow, he's really good. But you want them to be a part of the music. And And that stuck in my head. And I said, from now on, when I write a guitar solo, I'm going to think about those cats in South America. Can they chant this? Can they sing along to it? Because that's a great secret weapon to have.
That is amazing. And I mean, thinking of that, you have so many examples. I mean, Dirty Diana, a prime example of that. You know, I mean, wow, what a sing-along guitar part. One of the questions we actually had from Kevin on YouTube, he wanted to know, what's the biggest misconception about Michael Jackson based on your time with him?
Well, I wasn't a studio guitar player, and I was primarily, my recording sessions were really about Billy Idol. And with Billy Idol, it was usually myself, Billy, and our producer, Keith, in the studio. No entourage, no hangers on, it was the three of us, brainstorming. Right. But when I got the call to go and work with Michael Jackson, I was nervous because I thought, wow, I'm going to, first of all, I had to fly to LA where they were recording. And then I'm like, wow, there's going to be an entourage and there's going to be all this. And I'm not used to that, And I open the studio door and I walk in and it's Michael, Quincy Jones, his producer and an engineer, nobody else. It was exactly the same way I was used to working with Billy. He was such a fan of rock and roll and wanted to know so much about our show, a rock and roll show, because when I met him, he was getting, we did the Dirty Diana, and then he was preparing for his world tour. And he had only done tours with the Jacksons, which were like R&B based. Back then it was those artists didn't really have the production. And he had seen Queen and he had seen Van Halen, and he that's what he wanted. He wanted that spectacle, the big rock spectacle. And I remember him asking me all these questions about sound and lighting companies and all this. He had his hands in every aspect of what he did. He was an absolute perfectionist. His attention to detail. I remember there was, one part that I played, and there was like a little beat. It was subtle, and I missed it. There was like a beat that you miss. You kind of lay out for it, and I didn't catch it on the first go through. And he said, "Oh, that third beat on the fourth bar or whatever it is, He goes, you need to stop playing. You need to lay out on that, because that space is what makes the other stuff as important, wow. And that's a Miles Davis thing. That's Miles always says, it's the notes you don't play that are as important as the ones you do." Right. And so that attention to detail was pretty astounding that he caught that. I mean, he was really at the top of his game then. And, a very, he's a totally normal dude in every aspect. And I think a lot of that had to do with when I worked with him, Quincy Jones was still in the picture. And I got the feeling Quincy was almost like a father figure that he trusted. And the two of them, they seemed to get along like a house on fire. They shared jokes, and it was a really upbeat, positive experience. And I relished every fucking moment I got to work with those guys.
Man, that sounds so cool. He sounds like a really down-to-earth guy who was willing to learn himself, even though he was the king of pop,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the bad stuff, and, I'm not here to judge, but I think that when Quincy wasn't involved anymore, there's a lot of, bad characters that got involved and allowed him to isolate. Man, yeah, and I've seen that with so many successful artists when they start isolating. And what are you going to write about? What is your life? As a musician, you have to be inspired by life and experience, and life's experience. If you're just locked away and shuttered from life, it's going to get weird, man. And and the weirder it gets, the further out it's, it's. I think that's really what happened, is his isolation.
And you've seen that in the same business. So, I mean, I would definitely take it from you. That's an insane point to think about. Did you know that Dirty Diana was going to be a hit based on the success of Thriller, or were you not sure?
I didn't even know it was going to be a single, but it was that record. Obviously, the follow up to Thriller has all eyes on it. Fortunately, he had the tunes to back it up, and I remember one of the things that when I spoke to Quincy, one of the things I was adamant about was that that Michael be in the studio. I said, Mike, I'll come and do the thing as long as Michael's in the studio. And he said, of course he'll be in the studio. It's his record. So,
right.
But you sometimes you'd be surprised when the star is not involved, for that. So, yeah, I mean, it was, and then we did the video, and obviously it kind of blew up. Video was everywhere,
Seriously, massive video. Did you have time for one more YouTube question by chance?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. The last question we had was from John, and he wanted to know who's one group that you believe it's an injustice they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh man, there's a lot of them. Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh yeah, that's a big. I can't believe they're not in there.
Right, and I don't sit around listening to Grand Funk Railroad records, but they sold out Shea Stadium quicker than the Beatles. They were really important American band from Flint, Michigan, and Grand Funk should be in the Rock and Roll. It's such an important American band. They were massive. When I was learning guitar, man, Grand Funk was as big as you could get. Mm-hmm. And for some reason they're not in the Hall of Fame.
It is a terrible injustice. Well, let's hope they get in. And Steve, thank you so much for your time today and your insight. It's tremendously appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you, man.